And it's just a privilege to be able to speak with you today. Thank you so much for
Thank
taking
you.
some time out of your day for us.
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Jeff. I know you've got more than one location, and I know that you have many other endeavors, and you're highly sought after. I'd love to hear about, your business, how you got started, and just, a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I live and work here in Birmingham. My office is in Birmingham. We have offices though throughout the state. We have an office in East Lansing. We have a strong presence in Grand Rapids. We handle a lot of cases in northern Michigan as well. We also have offices throughout the country in other states as well. But primarily out of the Tri-County area over here, I handle a lot of larger divorces, complex custody issues, stuff like that. I'm also a mediator, so I mediate divorce cases, I mediate child custody cases as well.
Wow, it's a big undertaking in and of itself. I've been through the process, so that's interesting.
Well, the nice thing about mediation now, and especially post-COVID, is that traditionally people used to use mediation just towards the end of a divorce or right before a trial date to try to settle all of the issues.
Right.
And even then, I didn't really like that method. I would break it up into sessions over different areas. You might have a mediation session over parenting time, another one over the real estate and real property, another one over a business. Different types of issues, and it helps people focus a little bit more and process it better. The worst thing is when a client feels forced to settle a full divorce case at the last mediation that's the night before trial, and they wake up the next day with buyer's remorse. And so, but now what COVID's kind of done is it's almost forced people to go in on the smaller issues or to break it down to mediation because courts were less accessible, judges are less accessible, and it was easier to get in with a mediator, even though a lot of mediators are booked up for months now, but it's easier to get in on Zoom for, even if it's an hour session or a 2-hour session, to help resolve whatever issue it is, as opposed to going to court, taking a risk in front of the judge, spending maybe even a lot more money. You can be a little bit more in control when you're part of the process of mediation, and that's the whole point of it.
Absolutely. It sounds like COVID wasn't a horrible thing then. It kind of maybe pulls people that shouldn't be in the same room together into, to do Zoom like you said and not be so combative maybe.
It actually has worked for some people. And it's also forced lawyers to work with each other a little bit better than maybe most lawyers traditionally did to reach settlements and to reach resolutions. I remember in the beginning of COVID when courts were completely closed and we couldn't even access them over the phone or Zoom, as lawyers we were forced to work together to reach resolutions in emergent situations for our clients, whether they were COVID related or parenting time related or a combination of both, or even real estate related in the event that somebody was selling a property or buying a property and there isn't a judge there to weigh in, and the lawyers had to work it out on their own with their clients.
Well, it's because technically, even though you may be going against each other in court, you're colleagues, just like real estate agents. I always say to people, even though we may be on opposite sides, we have the same goal. We're trying to get a house sold. You're trying to get a couple divorced. You have the same end game result, and you're going to see these attorneys again. And it's just better if everyone can at least. I call it playing nice in the sandbox.
Yeah, but I mean, listen.
Is it a pipe dream?
We get along with a lot of lawyers, and it's important to have good relationships, but it's also your client is first and foremost, and that's the focus. And we can't think about, we're going to have to deal with this lawyer later. It's a matter of getting the best result for our client. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the best result is not always achieved by being, people like to say, I want a bulldog lawyer. Well, I don't know exactly what that really means, but that's not necessarily the best approach in every case. It's a matter of being smart about it. And in a divorce, most of the time, especially if you have kids, you're gonna have to deal with each other forever. So no matter how bad it is, most people end up or forced to get along later, at least for the sake of your kids. So the last thing that I think a lawyer should be doing is driving them further apart. And our job is to make sure that our clients know that they're gonna have to work together for the sake of their kids. And there's certain things to where, I've had, even this morning I had conversations with some clients and prospective clients about they can easily spend more money than what they could potentially gain. And really, if we're fighting over parenting time or custody, I don't think you can put a dollar figure on that.
Right.
But when we start nickel and diming support, and listen, I believe everybody should get what is fair, what they're entitled to and what's fair. But at the same time, it kind of becomes a thing of just people wanting to fight with each other that's going to drive a further wedge between them. And ultimately, is that truly in the best interest of your kids? I don't think it is.
Probably not.
I don't think it is.
Probably not. So it sounds like you look at the whole situation holistically, and you're really just trying to get them to the end goal of, what's fair, what's equitable, like you said, and just maintaining as much of that relationship as possible so they can be successful co-parents. And if they don't have to co-parent, they don't have any kids, well, they'll never see each other again if they don't want to, and that's probably an easier
a lot of times it is. It's a lot easier to fight over money than it is parenting time.
Right.
But listen, and with that, I don't think I've ever been called a holistic lawyer before, so thank you for that.
Right.
I never really thought of that.
The whole thing. I love that.
But it is important, again, when you have kids, to think about that, and that's got to be part of the focus of the end goal.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So how long? I know this is a loaded question, but how long does a typical divorce take?
Well, most cases in Michigan, especially in Michigan, now other states they can go on for years and a ridiculously long period of time. But in Michigan, most cases are going to be resolved in a year. You're going to be divorced within a year, usually. If you have minor children in Michigan, a minor child is a child under 18 or up to 19 and a half if they're still in high school. So if you have minor children, the minimum waiting period in order for the divorce to be final is 6 months. Now, you can file immediately, but it's from the date of filing. And some judges will waive it for good cause, but realistically, most divorces take between 6 months to a year.
Okay.
Now, if you don't have minor children, I think it's down to 2 months is the minimum, but there's probably very few people where their divorces from start to finish can be done in 2 months.
Sure.
And it's a process, and part of it is there's a lot of things to digest, and people's emotions change a lot too. And it's a matter of if you have kids, you've got to get used to what the new life is going to look like, where they're going to be residing, how they're going to adapt, and prepare them for that. But I think the important thing for me, and I try to remind my clients, is what you think on the night before you filed the divorce versus the day after you filed, and in the months coming after that. I think your position, it's natural for us to change and think based on emotion, and so that's part of the reason why everybody, it's in the best interest to make sure people weigh all their options, look at everything, and make sure they're making the right decision.
Absolutely. I noticed that too for my divorce. The court was their biggest concern was the kids, and I think it should be. They kind of looked at us, and I think we had a mediator, and they looked at us and said, listen, you two are taking up our time. You should have been able to figure out your stuff. You can't, so now you're asking us to do it. And I was like, wow, it's kind of true, right? And so their whole focus was on the kids and whatnot. So, and that's kind of how they took it. We're going to do what's best for these kids. And that was basically leads right into you're already going into my second thought with you is, somebody's considering, because there's always people considering divorce. You don't just wake up one day and go, I'm filing for divorce today. For me, it was a process of probably a couple years of thinking about it and not wanting to do it and trying to not do it. What advice do you have for someone who might be watching us and contemplating it, before they jump in? Any considerations?
Well, I will tell you this, especially during COVID and with maybe a little too much togetherness.
Right.
We have received a lot of calls, and a lot of times it's me telling people, I don't think you should file for divorce yet. And I'm never going to tell anybody when it's the right time or wrong time to file for divorce. But there's also a lot of people acting on emotion, and I think there'd be a lot more people divorced if the togetherness caused us to decide we want to file for divorce. So it's important to make sure that it's an important decision, and sometimes filing for divorce could actually make your relationship better, but unfortunately, a lot of times too, it could make any chance of reconciliation worse and not happen.
Sure.
And for others, it helps them realize, hey, it's a wake-up call, and they need to fix
Right.
stuff, and they can reconcile.
Right.
So those are important issues with that. Is don't act on emotion. But obviously, if you're in an abusive situation or to where you're afraid for your life or your children's life or something, that's when you get out right
Of
away.
course. Right.
And there's several other reasons, but I will say it is important to talk to maybe a family member that's been through it before. Now everybody's situation and circumstances is different, but if you have a friend or a family member, or if you a therapist, counseling, something like that. But also, the important thing is talk to maybe multiple attorneys. Make sure you feel comfortable with the attorney, that the attorney's competent and can give you good advice. And as soon as you feel comfortable with that, and you're ultimately sure you want to make that decision to get started, I think that's when you do it. But I think it's, like you said, I don't think it's somebody that could make the decision in an instant. It's something that has to marinate and process, unless it's an emergency or dangerous type situation.
Right. And so with, like you just mentioned, kind of vetting attorneys, when you're meeting with a few attorneys, what would somebody be looking for? What questions should they ask, or how would they go about that process to see if this is the person that I'm going to walk me through this process?
I think it's important to choose an attorney that isn't just telling you what you want to hear. And I tell a lot of people, I kind of wish I was in the wedding planning business, because people are very happy when
Right?
they get married.
It's more fun.
Nobody's ever happy when they get a divorce, or very few people are. Okay,
Right.
and people feel like they're losing no matter what, and feel upset. And it's important to be able to have realistic expectations from the very beginning. And if a lawyer's telling you things that you don't want to hear, I think that you should probably respect that, as opposed to a lawyer just giving false promises.
Right.
And make sure it's a lawyer that's connected or knows the jurisdiction of where you're going to get a divorce. It makes things a little bit smoother, a little bit easier to know how people work. Their relationships are also,
Huge.
important, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And another thing is somebody knowledgeable and that has a presence, and somebody that's willing to communicate. I know there's a lot of lawyers that don't give out their cell phone numbers. Everybody in my firm gives out their cell phone numbers. All our clients can get a hold of us usually any time of the day. And it's important to have somebody accessible, because a lot of times, especially when you're going through a divorce, when you have issues or problems, it might not be 9 to 5. It might be in the evening. It might be on a holiday. It might be a weekend.
Right.
So it's important to have somebody you feel comfortable with and communicate with well.
Absolutely. And I know you do that, because I met you years and years and years ago, just mutual acquaintance, and I could just feel that about you, because you were so open to letting me just come and chat and ask some questions.
Absolutely.
And that's not something that everybody would do. That's not something that a lot of attorneys would take the time to do. So I could tell that you have a really strong heart for people and helping people, and that's what I love to do too. Is our business is we work with people.
Absolutely.
And we're helping them navigate a difficult situation sometimes. And when I work with people going through divorce and selling their home, it's even more stressful, because they've got these huge life decisions going on. And so we try and handle that stress so that maybe you don't have to, have a client that's completely just off the wall. Yeah, I remember I was just a basket of nerves some days. Just knowing that I had someone walking me through that process when I was getting my home, it took a huge level of stress off. And I know that probably was great for my attorney, because less times me calling her freaking out about life. So let's talk about some financial issues.
Sure.
When you're going to divide assets, a lot of people don't realize, and I think most of the time it's women, we're more connected maybe to the family home. That's where we had the kids. We want the kids to have, as much normalcy as possible. So a lot of times women want to keep the house if they possibly can. It's not always equal and equitable, though, to kind of trade off on assets. For example, if I had a home and it was valued at $500,000, let's say I have no mortgage, it's paid, it's free and clear, $500,000, and the other spouse had maybe an IRA or another account valued at $500,000. Some people, well, I'll just keep the house and you take the account, and that's not always, the best decision to make. So what are your thoughts on when people are looking at the assets and division, and how do you kind of get in there and make sense of it all for them?
Well, there's several answers to your question. Is equal, equitable, and all of that. Well, most people think that when you get divorced, you divide real property and all property equally, 50-50, but it's what's equitable, what's fair. Sometimes it is taking everything and splitting it down the middle. Sometimes it's a balancing game. It's usually almost always a balancing game of balancing the assets and the debt. And not everybody is going to get half of every asset, but some person might get one asset, the other one will get another. As far as the house and trading off money in a 401k or something, and that's where experts get involved, and we advise our clients to consult with an accountant or financial expert, because we're not financial experts, we're not accountants, so we can't give that type of advice. But it is important to consult with the right person to find out, what am I really getting? What does it look like? Are there any penalties? Are there any taxes, any interest? For example, if you take a house, but if you're awarded the house, but your plan is to sell the house the month after you get a divorce, are you taking into consideration the fees that it's going to cost you to sell it, between commissions and other fees? And those are things that are important. Also, when you split a retirement account, is it being done through a quadro, which is an acronym for Qualified Domestic Relations Order, which shelters, I think, are kind of helps you avoid some of the penalties and fees, where it divides. It's a mechanism that allows you to divide a retirement account or asset without having the strict penalties of just walking in and withdrawing it. So there's several different things. It's important to have an attorney that's knowledgeable about all of this, and also that's going to be able to steer you to the right professionals if you don't already have your own, to figure out what makes more sense. And as far as you said, a woman or mother usually likes to keep the house. And maybe that's the case, but maybe they can't afford it. So it's also important for your attorney to sit down with you and maybe a financial advisor and figure out, does it really make sense for you to keep the house or not? And are you taking the house but no cash from anywhere else? Well, how are you going to afford to pay it? Also, another important issue is regarding financing and financing the mortgage. If you have a mortgage and it's in your spouse that is a primary income earner's name, well, how are you going to get financing? And the biggest mistake I find that people make, so once people get spousal support, that helps them with getting financing. But one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is when they get divorced, in a judgment divorce, the period of time to refinance the property that they want to keep is unrealistically short. It takes a very long time to get a mortgage. Most of the time, it takes an even longer time to get a mortgage when they're waiting to see and get an establishment of spousal support, or maybe life after the divorce and how long you're going to work. And for the other person, the spouse that's not keeping the real estate, but the mortgage is still on their name, I also see problems where that language isn't strong enough, or they're not necessarily protected. What happens if a payment's made late? What happens if a payment is made after 30 days? Do you have an opportunity to pay it and deduct it from maybe a spousal support payment or something else? So all of that, it's important to have an attorney that's knowledgeable with that, and also consult with your realtor and real estate expert as well, and figure out to make sure you're making the right decision regarding that piece of real estate.
Right. So you're like, just in that one answer, you're so knowledgeable not only about the divorce process. Obviously, someone's going to go to a divorce attorney. I hope they're going to a divorce attorney to get divorced. But you know the real estate. I know you've dabbled in real estate as well. So you know real estate. You know, I can hear you talking about mortgage. So you're knowledgeable about that. And that's, to answer the question I asked you, you want an attorney like you, somebody who understands how all these moving parts work together and will be able to maintain your best interest. I would say would be, somebody, you want that person in your corner, so you've got all those pieces together. So hopefully everyone's paying attention and listening. And there's a lot of things that you don't think of. You just think of, I'm gonna get divorced, but you don't, there's a lot of little minutia and there's a lot of big things, and you don't see it all as you're going through the process. So just knowing that you have someone like yourself to kind of lead them through and take care of them, that at least gives you, going through a horrible situation, it's tough. Divorce is tough. There's no ins and outs about it, but just to know you've got someone holding your hand through it, not maybe literally holding your hand, but someone's got your back.
Yeah.
So that's huge relief.
I tell my clients, I hope that you could sleep better at night, and I'm the one that should be losing sleep over your case, and that's why you're paying us, and paying us a lot of money is for us to worry about your case and worry about your problems, but also to communicate that all with you. I will never make a decision for my client. My client's going to make the decision, but I hope that I've educated them enough to make a wise and good decision after we've educated them on that specific issue.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. It's all about educating your clients and letting them make the decision what's best for them. So one final question I had for you in real estate, that's what I do.
Of course.
If someone came to you and said, okay, we're going to file for divorce, should we list the house now? Should we wait till we're X amount through the process? Should we wait till the divorce is final? What is usually your response to that?
There's no usual response. Everybody's case is different.
Okay.
Having kids can impact that. Established custodial environment is one of the many factors when considering custody and parenting time. And sometimes it is important to remain in that house. Sometimes if you're staying in the same school district or the other spouses, those are all things to think about. Also, can you afford it or not? And unfortunately, sometimes when people come in initially to meet with us and ask us that question, they don't know what the full picture of all the finances look like until we've conducted discovery and exchanged financial information with their soon-to-be ex. So we don't necessarily know, but there are situations where somebody owns real estate that's a vacation property or owns property somewhere else and they're an additional income property or whatever it is, and they make the decision, hey, we need to liquidate as much as possible now, we can't wait till the end of the divorce. Well, usually what we have to do is get permission from the opposing side, and we have an agreement, and those funds will go into an escrow account or trust account to be divided later on, either upon mutual agreement or order of the court, or it's part of the full settlement. So there's situations where people sell a real estate before they get divorced, sometimes after they filed, and most commonly it's usually after they get divorced. But there's also issues with that, and one of the big things I see both as a mediator and as a practitioner is when people agree to sell a real estate, whether it's their house or whether it's a marital residence or another residence, after they're divorced, and then split the proceeds. Well, what I like is built into the agreement. I think it's important to agree on the realtor, and if you can't, then have an arbitrator that's going to choose the realtor for you. That realtor is going to set the price at what they believe to be fair market price. You're going to follow that realtor's advice on certain things, and it just creates a lot more, I think, peace through the process. And as opposed to driving up litigation after you're already divorced and post-judgment issues, because these are things you didn't think about. Unfortunately, a lot of calls we get are not people that are starting their divorce, they're people that have already been divorced, but their judgment of divorce, the divorce decree didn't think about or anticipate all of these potential issues that can come up. So, it's important in real estate deals, it's important in whether it's for a mortgage or how you're going to divide the proceeds or which realtor you're going to use or how much you're going to list the house for. It's also life changes. People get in other relationships, people have other children, they can get remarried, multiple different things. Children grow, they get into different activities, different schools. You need to think about all of that in the beginning and craft the judgment divorce, either anticipating those or have a trigger mechanism of what's going to happen when something happens. And those are all important to consider.
Those are amazing things to consider. So thank you so much. I just have really, really appreciated your time today and information. And it's important for me because as I was certified to be a real estate divorce specialist, I need attorneys that I can send people to, people that I know that will take really good care of them. So it's been really amazing to be able to introduce you today and chat with you, and you've given so much information, a wealth of information. So again, thank you so much for your time. And maybe in the future, if you want to meet and do it again, we'll get to see your new location, and you can tell us what's been new and exciting. I know you've got a lot of plans you're building, and just
construction is going on at our new office in Birmingham.
Yeah, that's amazing. So hope we can do it again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Be blessed. I don't want to hear me. Don't make me hear me.
What do you think? You did good.
You did amazing.
Did I?
Yes. No, you were amazing. Please tell me I wasn't doing the mom sway. I caught myself almost doing, because after you've had kids and you to make them.
Oh yeah.
So literally, sometimes when I'm standing,
I do that, but
I
it's just
don't
'cause I
stand
can't sit
still.
still.
Anyways, I think
Yeah,
I
I
have
know, I
ADD.
can't sit
I don't
still
stand still, so I kept saying to myself, keep your legs straight. So I kept standing like this, so I couldn't move. I'm like, don't move.
You guys are good. You're
Please tell me I
good.
didn't